no veas, a Sevilla. Y al último que cuando ya salió la bien de regla.
It is Friday on Raid Shadow Legends, but you knew that. Now, the first thing you're going to notice here is that the portal is all golden sparkly again, so, let's have a look at this. What's happening? So, it's a progressive chance on a bunch of corrupted faction champions because, Halloween and scary stuff and etc, etc. Am I going to bother with it? No. Should you? I don't know, if you want, it's your account, not mine. Personally, I wouldn't because it's not tying into anything in terms of fusion, etc. But I don't know. And we all know that either way I wasn't going to pulling because you're here for my review on Hansel Witchhunter. Obviously, he's not out yet. It's going to be a few more days. I think it's next Thursday, but it can't stop us from having an educated analysis on it. So without wasting any more of your time in that regard, let's switch this over. And here he is. He is the brother to Gretel Hagbane when the childhood tale decided it didn't want to be childhood anymore, and instead some medieval dark fantasy that's about as 20% as interesting as it thinks it actually is. So, as with Gretel Hagbane, what we're going to do here is we're going to review Hansel as is, because you might not do the Gretel fusion, you might mess up at some point, or you might just open an Ancient Shard of Fun one day and out this guy pops up all by himself. So the first thing we're going to do, as we did with Gretel, is we're going to assign some placeholder stats and multipliers. They're going to go here and there. Obviously, these aren't the actual official stats for them. This is just a guess based on how things have been for about 5 years now. They don't really deviate a whole lot. So there's that to work with, and if they do grief his numbers for fun like they did for Scourge the Halfspawn, then, well, reviewed him based off how it should be and not how it actually was, without anything unrealistic. So yeah, so obviously anything to do with Hansel, Gretel, forget about it, reviewing it as is. So starting with the A1, and this immediately jumps out to me as potentially the best part of his kit. Well, for anyone who is a Phoenix enjoyer, old man with sword, he hits it twice and vast amounts of health bars disappear. You might end up be treated to the same here, except now not only will this be higher stat product because it's a legendary and not an epic, but we also have a 75% chance of a weaken as well. So if your team didn't have it before, then now you have someone who applies it. So if they don't grief this number, and it is what I think it is, or it should be, then I might get him, or at least try to get him purely as an upgrade to Phoenix in Hydra. Now obviously, there's no permadeath here, so he hasn't got the application elsewhere, but I think he's decent for that alone. Of course, it really does come down to getting a soul for him, which is easier said than done, and everything else to do with it. But if you do happen to, Ancient Shard, what's this? Hansel, Mortal Soulstone, what's this? A 6-star soul? Then yeah, do that. Now A2 is kind of boring. It's just I hit him twice, I shred a couple forms of mitigation, and I get an extra turn if I kill them. Again, this is fine. There's lots of shielding around, even though White Narcissus scared off a lot of it. And in terms of a couple of things that are bad about this, we're going to get around to it once we've gone through the rest, but we'll move on next. So, first off, what I'm going to compare this to, in terms of A3, is how Alika, who is a Barbarian's Epic, locks out everything by 2 turns by herself. But obviously, a lot of her power budget Fliss skill is based off Gretel being around, where it no longer checks accuracy and treads more defense. And this would be good, if not for the fact that in Live Arena, these are really hard to pick as a pair, and elsewhere this isn't really quite as valuable. But I do appreciate the effort. It's not bad. I think it just baseline should have just increased the cooldown of all skills by 2 turns for times when you can't use both together or you're just completely unable to. And passive, now this is another Hydra effect, because this should mean that he is immune to fear and true fear, which Head of Torment would otherwise place on. Now this steps on the toes of Inclusive Shamal slightly if you are using them on the same team. But if you weren't, then sure, now you have a Phoenix who is a bit more durable, has Weaken, and can't be feared, which is pretty good as far as all things considered. Obviously, it's nowhere near the Teox, Toshiro, Ayasu, etc. Actually, I say that about Onryo Ayasu, but really he is not that great now because Serpent was 100% DR for some reason. They could have just stopped that normalizing Trina's damage to the most part. Anyway, this is another video, so let's keep on with Hansel, shall we? And then the rest of this effect is if Gretel is around. Now this, again, we are going to review both of them as a pair in terms of where you can use them, where it would work, etc. But we're going off standalone right now, just in case your memory is as bad as mine, because I quite literally have memory of a 70-year-old, So, going off the numbers that we think we should have, you will notice that he's got a lot of the similar weaknesses that Gretel has in terms of standalone. There's no self-buffing here. There's no self-defense. There's no scaling. No permadeath. And he's not as good into lockout. While normally Gretel can double hit against anyone who has buffs similar to Candrathron, the A1 here requires an extra hit on debuffed targets. So that's going to be a bit harder to do because everyone's under Stone Skin or something else, and if you try to debuff someone, you just get polymorphed. Because remember, if you don't want to be polymorphed in Arena, just don't use champions that place debuffs. Now, don't mind us while we keep printing champions designed for Arena use that place debuffs, and some of them quite literally have a game balanced around them. You know, Gizmac. But, yeah. So those are a few weaknesses that he does have, and again, where would I use them? Hydra, I'd say, is unironically his best area, despite the fact how his A2 and A3 are both clearly designed for Arena usage. For Live Arena, I wouldn't pick him as a carry in that regard, and anyone who has Lazarius somehow will see him as an immediately worse version of that in every single way. There is absolutely no reason to ever pick him in that regard. Well, if you don't have mythicals, I don't know, just open primal shards or something, what's the issue? And obviously, Plat Arena, he's not going to do anything there. Boss killing effect, apart from having high damage on his A1, if it is how we think it'll be, then he doesn't really have max HP anywhere. Well, unless they actually say that he does, but I think for someone who is very blatantly designed for Arena usage, it might not be there. If it is, then great, and besides, it'd give people more reason to actually pull him instead of how many of us are thinking, I'll do without. Like myself, I'll do without. We don't know how he's going to be added to the game in terms of acquisition. It could be a progressive, it could be like Deck of Fate, Hero's Path, guaranteed for Ancients or Sacreds, one of the two. Could be first place for tournament only, you know, just start picking out and hoping that you don't have some absolute psychopath in your group who does 200,000 points, or something along the lines of that, you know, like Prism Shard, etc. So there is that. So we've got a bit back and forth, and if I've lost you slightly, then we'll just rewatch part of this, I guess. And yeah, there's not much more me to say in him right now, because this he more than Gretel lives or dies on the A1 multiplier for myself, and next time around we're going to go over both Hansel and Gretel as a pair. But until then, we're done, so yeah. See ya.